Hello, and welcome to the third video of the figure units. You've looked at the history of the figure in arts, drawing with proportions, and gesture drawing, and now we're going to delve into drawing a figure that isn't just standing forward-facing to the picture plane. We're going to be drawing figures that are coming at you from all different angles, using foreshortening.
Foreshortening is often referred to as the most difficult aspect of figure drawing, but why is that? The issue is not within our lack of skill, but in our brains. When someone is starting to learn figure drawing, they often learn by drawing a lot of front-facing, standing figures. It is common for our brains to record the proportions that we see in the first figures we draw, and try to replicate those proportions in figures that don't have the same angles and proportions as the figures we're used to drawing. So I'll show you what I mean.
So I have a front-facing figure that we practiced with earlier on in the gesture drawing video, and it has pretty standard proportions. And on my right here, I have a figure that has more perspective in relation to where it is in front of the camera. So her foot is a lot closer to us than her body is, making her foot a lot bigger and her body a lot smaller, the core of her body a lot smaller than it is in real life if she were standing just like this. I'm gonna do a little measurement of the leg in our standard proportions guy here. Alright, and I'm gonna draw it over here, just for reference. It's about that long. Now what happens to the length of the leg when it's foreshortened? Meaning that it has been distorted by the way that the camera is seeing the figure and the position that the figure is in. I'm gonna take the measurement of our leg here from crotch to the end of the foot. Alright, and I'm gonna bring it over here. That's a big difference. And that is what happens in foreshortening. Our proportions are distorted by the position that the figure is now in. Now, because we learned to draw figures this way, and we've been drawing them a lot like this so far, it can be really hard to go from this kind of proportion of the figure to this perspective of the figure. Because our brains have been trained to draw a figure like this, and it's really hard sometimes to retrain our brain to see a figure not just as we've learned to draw it, but as it is in a different pose.
There are three methods that you can think about when you're drawing your figures in perspective, and the first thing is to think about drawing the abstract shapes that you see before you go into the main body parts of the figure. Now, when you start your first figure drawing with a figure that is in perspective, you may look at the reference that you have and you might feel stuck at first and not know where to start. So one trick is to start with a basic shape of parts of the body, or the main part of the body, or all of the body that you see. So I saw that this position took up this angular shape that I ended up drawing as the map for where I would position my limbs and other parts of the figure within the shape. And with all drawings that you're not used to making, please don't tear yourself apart if you feel like you haven't gotten the right proportions in your first couple of drawings with figures that are in perspective. Don't worry about it. You are okay, and you've got to be your own cheerleader during this process, because Nobody gets it right on their first try. The second method that we can think about when we're drawing our figures is alignment. Now, what I mean by alignment is when we're looking at our limbs and we're trying to figure out, where would this foot fall in relation to the other foot, we can look at angles that align our feet in space, or any other body part that you're having trouble placing into the picture plane. Now at this point of my drawing, I have figured out the main lines that I want to use, and I've made my lines darker where I want the perimeters of my body to be. And I've drawn that line from the head to the left toe to check out what my angles ended up being and if I got them right. This is something that you can do in the beginning of your drawing. I would advise you to do if you're just starting out, but I did it at the end. The third thing that we should think about when we're drawing our figures in perspective is looking at the negative space between the limbs and between the edges of the figure and the rest of the background. So I've drawn this basic shape of the ballerina here that I have as my reference. I'm seeing a square up at the top for the shoulders and the basic shape of the hands, and I'm paying attention to those dark negative spaces between the ankle there and the hand. I've shaded in the negative space so that I don't get confused with all of the shapes in my drawing right now. See, you can see the lighter portions of my drawing, where the limbs are and where the foot is, are lighter than where I've shaded in the negative space. Paying attention to the negative space, especially with a reference that is quite complicated, such as this one, is really important because it'll enable you to be able to differentiate where each limb is and the placement of one thing versus another. And after all of this, if you still feel stuck, you can always go back to measuring. This is a technique that we used in our proportions video, you may remember, and it's really great for if you feel stuck in a drawing and you don't think that the proportions in your drawing match the proportions in your reference. So I've chosen to use the head as my unit of measurement, and I've measured that it fits into the foot closest to us about 3 times, so I've copied that into my drawing to match it with the reference. You can also do this with any other part of the body that you are feeling stuck with.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be kind to yourselves. And I'll see you next time. Bye!